So the Young Turks just made this video completely misguiding viewers once again and taking out of context what the president just said on Tucker Carlson. So let's watch the video first and I'll point out exactly what didn't happen.
Donald Trump is currently in Los Angeles in order to raise money for his re-election campaign, and he's been pretending as though he cares about poverty and homelessness in the state of California. Take a look.
New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, they've got a major problem with,
it's very sad,
with filth.
Very sad.
Why is that?
It's a phenomenon that started 2 years ago. It's disgraceful. I'm going to maybe, and I'm looking at it very seriously. We're doing some other things, as you probably noticed, like some of the very important things that we're doing now. We cannot ruin our cities. And you have people that work in those cities. They work in office buildings, and to get into the building, they have to walk through a scene that nobody would have believed possible 3 years ago. And this is the liberal establishment. This is what I'm fighting. You know, I had a situation when I first became president. We had certain areas of Washington, D.C. where that was starting to happen. And I ended it very quickly. I said, you can't do that. When we have leaders of the world coming in to see the president of the United States and they're riding down a highway, they can't be looking at that. I really believe that it hurts our country. We're looking at it very seriously. We may intercede. We may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up.
Okay, that's the most callous man in America right there. It's a really interesting juxtaposition to somebody like Bernie Sanders, who has this huge plan to help with housing that he put out today. But I want to break down a couple of things that are hilarious in that video. It all started 2 years ago.
Well, you heard it, folks. It started in 2017 once Trump took the leadership position in this country. So homelessness caused by Donald Trump. Look, I'm kidding, but honestly, the proposals that he has put forward when it comes to housing in America will lead to an increase in homelessness. And I'll get to that in just a second.
So, but does anyone think that homelessness became a problem only 2 years ago? And even if that were true, then he'd be blaming himself. What an idiot, as usual. And then he said, you know, we're looking into, well, maybe looking into proposals. Oh, really? I'm looking forward to your proposals on housing. Hasn't happened yet. And so, well, they do have some proposals that would make it worse.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll tell you about that in a second. Anyway, but I like how he caught himself in the middle and like, maybe. He said, wait, would that help anybody that isn't a billionaire? I don't know, maybe, right? And then he says that, oh, we had this problem in DC, but it's okay, I ended it. I mean, he's like an Austin Powers character. You know, my dad says outlandish things like he invented the question mark. Okay, so yeah, no, homelessness is done. Trump ended it in DC, so that's over. But actually the biggest takeaway I had was not that he actually cares about the homeless or anyone who's had trouble in their lives. The poor corporate executives walking out of their office buildings have to step over them. And those poor business guys going into their office buildings. And then his Saudi friends, when they come to visit him in Washington, they also have to step over the homeless people. So, the wealthy, they're bothered by the homeless. So that's the real problem.
When he sees people living in these tent cities, he doesn't view them as victims of a system that has failed them. He views them as an inconvenience. He views them as, you know, something disgusting that needs to be thrown away. And his policies really do echo that. So for instance, remember we reported on the opportunity zones that the Trump administration has pushed for. And the opportunity zones would provide massive tax cuts and the deferral of capital gains taxes for these real estate developers who are supposed to go into places that are stricken with poverty and help to develop them and provide some affordable housing. But that is not actually what's happening. Oftentimes they'll get these massive tax cuts and they'll use that money to invest in new developments in areas that are already well-to-do.
Yes, they are supposed to. However, if we're going to be realistic, is it the president's fault that they don't do what they're supposed to? I looked into the zoning policy and yes, she is right that they're supposed to do good with the land that they get. But if someone gives me $100 and tells me you should do some good with this to help some people, and I go out and I spend it on myself, whose fault is it? Is it my fault or the person who gave me that money?
Also, let's go to graphic 3. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, this is a story we also talked about previously, is putting into effect new regulations that could turn thousands of legal residents and citizens, including 55,000 children, out of public housing. So what Trump wants to do there is kick any and all families out of public housing if anyone in that family is not a citizen. So let's say there are 2 parents and they have kids. If one of them or both of them are undocumented, doesn't matter if your kids were born in the United States. We're kicking you out of public housing. 55 children could be homeless as a result of that.
55,000.
55,000, sorry.
So Donald Trump's solution for homelessness is let's increase it. And the guy has no empathy, but I'll tell you, a lot of Republicans that they struggle with that. And so what he's doing is he's triggering their most primordial instinct, which is disgust. We've discussed this in other episodes of the Young Turks. That's what bothers conservatives the most.
There's more to the video, but I'm going to cut it off right here. Everything is available once again in my resources section in the description box. Everything I used, everything I've read, every page available to you to see. So let's get one thing straight first. Trump didn't say what he did out of disgust and in a way claiming that homeless people should not be around because they're trash and they get in the way of corporate people, business people, and all that. The Young Turks took his words out of context, so let me straighten it out. The big picture here is that there is homelessness in America, and it's rampant. In a country so luxurious, there's no excuse for having homeless people, especially the citizens of this country. To see such a sight is not okay because it's saying something about the country. So people who come to visit, tourists, whoever, whatever, when they see this, it brings a question to mind. How can a country that's so rich, so powerful, have homeless people living in alleys, on staircases, under bridges? What's happening? Trump is not saying that they are a nuisance that should be gotten rid of because they're an ugly sight. He's saying that there are people going about their day who do have homes and jobs, so why are there homeless people in a country so rich? There is no excuse. Do you guys really think he would be so stupid as to claim that homeless people are a waste and a nuisance and trash as the President of the United States? I don't think so. His words were misinterpreted. But let's take a look at a few facts. And this only scratches the surface. This is just the basic outline of what the Young Turks should have looked at before opening their mouths again. And once again, only giving part of the problem. I also want to mention that there are 2 opinion pieces in here, which you can find in the resources page. So the Trump administration does have a plan, and they want to privatize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac again. And there are 50 proposals aimed at lessening the government's role in the housing market. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac used to be private until 11 years ago when the Obama administration kicked in, and they became more a government deal. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a base to the housing market, if not the center of it all, and anything that fluctuates in the housing market will fluctuate in the economy. So the government took control of these 2 companies in 2008. And that's when things began to go south for both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and their debts piled. So Democrat Sherrod Brown has something to say about this, of course, and it's negative, claiming that Trump's plan to privatize these 2 companies once again and restoring them to their former glory will basically cause chaos, because the last 11 years were not chaotic enough. So under this plan, these 2 companies being privatized again would have to pay taxpayers a fee for government protection. There are some people in both parties who support this, meaning ending the government control of the companies. The Obama administration didn't do too much during his time because it is a touchy subject, and one false move can end in disaster. However, Trump has the guts to do something about it. And the end result, as quoted here, are incremental and realistic. Mark Calabria is the director of FHFA, which is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, and he is formerly Vice President Pence's chief economist. He says, it is, after 11 years, time to bring the conservatorships to an end, because it's critical to reducing government influence on the housing market. And to confirm, in this article, it states the same thing. The Trump administration has unveiled its plan for ending government control of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, 2 mortgage companies that nearly collapsed in the financial crisis 11 years ago. And guess who bailed them out? Taxpayers at $187 billion. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can pause and read it for yourself. But in the 3rd paragraph, it tells a little of what they do and why they're so important. These two companies don't make home loans, they buy them from banks and other lenders. They bundle them into securities and guarantee them against default and sell them to investors. And because they're under government control, investors are eager to have safe securities. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac stand behind nearly half of the US home loans. So why should they be privatized again? The administration officials say that the government should have only a limited role in housing finance and that the current system leaves taxpayers exposed to potential bailouts again. And both parties agree with this. And as I have said before, and in this quote by the Treasury Secretary, an effective and efficient federal housing finance system will also meaningfully contribute to the continued economic growth under this administration. Housing and economy are not separate. And to be realistic, Mark Calabria, again, had indicated that this is not going to happen right away. So whatever the Young Turks are expecting, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but all big things take time. This is a big country with a lot of people. Nothing will happen in a day. So besides privatizing in the plan, it would also include replacing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's affordable housing goals with more tailored support, and this would help first-time home buyers and low and moderate income borrowers. Hint, hint. But once again, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, also Democrat, claimed that the new plan would destabilize the economy, which would limit access to mortgages for working people across the country, because Trump's plan will make mortgages more expensive and harder to get. But let's talk about California, because the Young Turks claimed that the president himself said that the last 2 years has caused California to drop pretty bad in housing and help and homelessness and other problems. Here's the thing. When Trump became president, liberals went wild because they didn't get what they wanted, so of course they have to do everything in their power to go against the president. If he says or does one thing, they have to go against it. California is the exception to so many things because of their own stupidity, because of their own mayors, representatives, governor, and all other forms of authority. From families to schools to businesses to Hollywood. They protest other states, they cut them off from funds, they cut them off from transport, like the case was with the states that are against abortion and voted against having abortions anymore. Who was first on the line to speak out against them and actually take action? California. So in this opinion piece, what causes homelessness and why it increased in California, which by the way did not happen in just the last 2 years, the popular Democratic answer was the widening gap between wages and housing costs. And of course, they are frontline and having the $15 minimum wage. What happens when you have $15 minimum wage? Businesses can no longer afford employees and they get fired or laid off. But who caused it in the first place? Who was out there protesting that there should be a $15 minimum wage? But moving on, our housing crisis is our homeless crisis. This view allows them to offer solutions like higher minimum wage, increased government spending on housing, rent control laws limiting landlords' ability to evict tenants, and even laws taxing property owners who fail to make their property available for rent. Is it just me, or does that sound quite forceful? And is expensive rent really the cause? Since 2016, LA rent has been increasing, but now also the wages exceed the national average. Guess what? Wages increase, people get laid off, but also costs increase. If they want a $20 minimum wage, which is stupid because people go to school to get degrees to make that kind of money to start with, guess what else is going to increase to match that? Everything else. So, if you can't afford to live in LA, rational people look to live in surrounding cities. That's what rational people do. When it comes to homeless, most often we are not dealing with people capable of thinking rationally. And I've done homeless outreach programs, and this is true. In my mind, I'm thinking of all the possibilities and scenarios, whereas the person I'm talking to who is homeless is not. But apparently it is not politically correct to acknowledge these things. In the mayor's report, they entirely omit substance abuse from the list of causes of homelessness. In fact, in the entire 106-page report, neither the word drugs or alcohol appear a single time. And this may have something to do with the authors. All Democrats except for Oklahoma City Mayor Mick Cornett. LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, now facing a recall campaign as a result of his mishandling of the issue, has also pledged huge increases in spending on the issue. Yeah, because that's really going to solve the problem. One use of the spending, paying homeless people to pick up their own trash. Liberal LA City Councilman Mike Bonin is clearly as to where the money should be spent. So if somebody is living on the street, they have to go to the bathroom, so let's provide some toilets, he said. If somebody is living on the street, there is trash that they will generate, so let's provide trash receptacles. If somebody is living on the street, let's provide showers. Because this is truly the answer to helping homeless people? No, this is enabling them. What a dumb idea. This is never going to help them. It only provides temporary relief for them at the cost and expense of, you guessed it, taxpayers. Shouldn't the root of the problem be addressed? But here's a twist. There's a community in LA that created a task force made up of independent group of community volunteers committed to compassionately addressing the serious issues associated with homelessness. It seeks private, local solutions to the homeless problem and raises money through local contributors or contributions. They purposely look for causes to help. While the rest of LA has been experiencing double-digit annual increase in homelessness, this community reports it had dropped by 56% in the past 3 years. Democratic State Assemblyman Miguel Santiago, who represents Skid Row, said that it was hard to take Trump's ideas seriously when the president has also proposed cutting federal housing dollars and clawing back Obama-era rules that aim to desegregate neighborhoods. And on the topic that the Young Turks mentioned about housing illegal immigrants, it says here, another proposed Trump administration policy would deny federal housing aid to households that include anyone living in the country illegally, even when other members are eligible for such aid as lawful residents or U.S. citizens, meaning the children. Ben Carson wrote, your letter seeks more federal dollars for California from hardworking American taxpayers, but fails to admit that your state and local policies have played a major role in creating the current crisis. Unlike what the Young Turks were claiming that it was the president's fault, California made the choices that it made separate from Trump. Of course, they don't like Trump, they are liberals, they are anti-Trump everything, so they're gonna go against the grain. What is the result of that? Look, Skid Row. If California's homeless population had held in line with overall population trends, and that's key right there, America's homeless rate would have decreased. And I believe that's hinting towards taking in illegal immigrants. What happens when you take in too many people? You run out of resources. So instead of coming into this country legally with the documents that they needed in hand through the entrance, and this one's for Europeans too, because they end up staying here illegally when their visas expire. So instead of having the proper documents to be placed where it's most necessary and a place where the population can handle an influx of immigrants, a state like California says, hey, come on in, everyone and anyone. And then things go out of balance. So back to the paragraph, instead the opposite has happened as California's unsheltered homelessness population has skyrocketed as a result of the state's over-regulated housing market. Its inefficient allocation of resources and its policies have weakened law enforcement. Well said, Ben Carson. And here's an article on this. And of course, none other than people in California can call this plan torture and state-sponsored terrorism because they truly have no idea what these words mean. Giving resources to illegal people takes away from resources of the citizens of this country, and like Ben Carson said, population is thrown out of whack because they all flock to one place that is open to them freely, rather than being dispersed evenly with proper documents, so they don't have to worry. And as far as the children go, because the Young Turks have to throw children out there to make us all feel like our hearts have to melt, children should go with the parents. If the parents are here illegally, go back through the border, come in legally, get your documents, have a good life. It doesn't matter that the children are citizens. Parents made their choices, and the only way not to be separated is to keep the children with them. Harsh? Probably, but it's reality. Countries do not owe people a right to come into their countries or become citizens. It's a privilege, not a right. But if you are respectful, you come in the right way, God willing, you have that chance and you can make a better life for yourself. Why look over your shoulder and fear the rest of your life? Come on. So Councilman chimes in as well. It's breathtaking in its cruelty that illegal immigrants should not be given what they need because they came into this country illegally. Taxpayers should pay for everything that they need. Forget the American citizen. Forget the veterans that are on the streets. Forget your most immediate family, the citizens of this country. Because all things must be given to strangers before your own family. Besides being breathtaking in its cruelty, this would force immigrant families to choose between staying together or staying in their home. Let's be very clear, this is not housing policy, this is family separation policy. Back to Ben Carson, who said that the rule is not mean-hearted but logical, and that it's only fair to take care of legal residents first. You take care of your family first before you take care of a stranger. There is an affordable housing crisis in this country, and we need to make certain our scarce public resources help those who are legally entitled to it. Here's another reality check. When you can take care of yourself and your family first, you can take care of everyone else, because all is well in your own home. When we can take care of ourselves as a nation and our citizens first, we can take care of anyone else because we're already okay. It's not okay to put the welfare of others above the welfare of your own first. It's called priority. But once again, Democrats in Congress, particularly from, California, New York, and Texas, have pressured Carson to drop the proposal. From another opinion piece, let's take a look at Nancy Pelosi's city. 1 of every 11,600 residents is a billionaire, and the annual household income necessary to buy a median-priced home now tops $320,000. Yet the streets there are a plague of garbage and needles and feces. And every morning brings a fresh horror stories from Black Mirror hellscape. Homeless veterans are surviving on an economy of trash from billionaires' mansions. Wealthy homeowners are crowdfunding a legal effort, arguing that a proposed homeless shelter is an environmental hazard. A public school teacher suffering from cancer is forced to pay for her own substitute. So back to the Young Turks. Is it truly Trump's fault that all this is happening in California? Or is it the people of California who chose this path? Because from what I've seen in the past year, 2, 5, it's always California that takes the first stand and has the first word against anything that's normal. Who really did this to them? If you like this video, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Make sure your notification bell is turned on so you can get updates for new videos and answers to your comments.
Educate yourself!